Seriously? An old woman? No way. I'm gonna look for someone younger, so let's call off the engagement.
My fiancé Daniel, who was only a year older than me, called me an old woman. That alone was a shock. But to break off our engagement too? Daniel had a certain charisma that drew people to him, always surrounded by someone. He was smug in his ways. This wasn't the first or second time he cheated, and I had forgiven him every time. Clenching my fists, I'd welcome him home, only to cry alone at night in frustration. I had reached my limit. I couldn't forgive Daniel, or maybe I never truly forgave him from my heart. I just wanted to be with him, so I put on a facade, deceiving myself. Now, all the pent-up feelings were rushing back. I fixed my gaze on Daniel. Daniel, I'm done being pushed around by your caprices and selfishness. From now on, I'm living by my own will. And as a first step, Daniel, you're going to get what you deserve. Are you ready? My name is Ava. I just celebrated my 32nd birthday with my fiancé, Daniel. We've been dating for 18 years. We met in middle school, both of us just kids. Since then, I've always bent to Daniel's will, agreeing to his whims, accepting his requests. Before we knew it, we both crossed into our 30s. I started thinking about marrying Daniel, and I thought he felt the same. That's why he gave me an engagement ring, I believed. But now, how much more can I endure? Enduring days of betrayal from Daniel. I met Daniel when I was in 8th grade. He was a new 7th grader who told me he liked me soon after starting school. Will you go out with me? A what? I was bewildered. Being asked out by someone I barely knew, but I was flattered. Daniel was already tall and handsome, and more than anything, I felt proud to be asked out. There was a sense of superiority and excitement about dating a boy before anyone else. So I nodded. Nice to meet you, I'm Daniel. Daniel blushed, looking at me. Then he said something that made me flustered. I'm looking forward to being with you, Ava. Daniel. His mischievous voice and expression, I totally fell for him. But the elation didn't last long. Ava, you're dating Daniel? Oh yeah. I wondered how my classmate Emily knew. Seeing my confusion, another classmate, Chloe, added, Daniel's been bragging about it. Probably the whole school knows by now. Daniel did? I was filled with disbelief. Why did you do that? After school, I confronted Daniel. If the teachers find out, we'll be in big trouble. Sorry, I was just so happy. I wanted everyone to know you're my girlfriend, Ava. Daniel looked down sadly, but replied, I'll be more careful next time. Okay, I'd like that. At that moment, I had already forgiven Daniel. In fact, I found him irresistibly cute. Would I feel this way if I had a younger brother? No, it was a more awkward and sweeter feeling than that, I realized then. That made Daniel's first betrayal even more painful. That's the prettiest girl in school? I heard a disdainful voice. It was so unlike anything Daniel would say to me. I didn't recognize it at first. But once I did, there was no mistaking it. It happened during a school break. I was about to visit Daniel's classroom when I overheard the conversation in the hallway. The standards at the school aren't too high, huh? She's just average. But she's got a good figure, right? Yeah, the chest? Those are definitely big. That part will be fun. Oh, that's a relief. So you are a guy. Well, yeah. A sleazy laugh erupted. There's a group of boys gathered around Daniel. They seemed to be having a great time talking about my looks. I leaned against the wall, unable to move from the spot. My legs were shaking. Ava, are you okay? Yeah, I guess. My classmates came over, concerned. Daniel, still oblivious, continued to joke around with the other boys. That's just awful. But it's important to fit in with the group. I replied, my voice trembling with tears. Ava, maybe he's just embarrassed by the teasing. That's why he said that. My words trailed off. Tears started to flow. Accompanied by my classmates, I went back to my classroom crying. Daniel continued to darken my heart. If he heard about a popular girl at another school, he'd quickly go and flirt with her. Some of these girls seemed serious about dating Daniel. Ava, you have to go! Pressured by Emily and others, I headed to where Daniel was on a date with his new fling. Seeing me, Daniel turned pale. Ava. Who's this? The girl, Grace, was prettier than me. Left alone, Daniel might have switched to her. I suppressed the urge to run and answered. I'm Daniel's girlfriend. Ava. Daniel cried out my name as if in agony. Grace glared at Daniel with a stern look.
Wait a minute.
You lied to me? Hello.
No, it's not like that.
Daniel watched his fling leave with a pained expression and voice. Left alone, he turned to me, looking terrified.
Ava, listen. What's your intention?
My voice was cold. In response, Daniel opened and closed his mouth frantically, like a fish out of water. Finally, he seemed to find an excuse.
She was persistent, you know?
When I confronted him, Daniel always replied like this.
I just went on one date with her, Ava. You're the one for me.
Right. I nodded. It wasn't that I was convinced. I just knew that no matter what I said, Daniel wouldn't apologize. And more than anything, I didn't want to keep nagging about his cheating and end up being disliked by him. My relationship with Daniel, which started with a sense of superiority, had become dominated by him. Even regarding our future paths, Daniel pushed me to choose a high school that suited his academic level and convenience.
We should go to the same high school, right?
Yeah, but my teacher said I could go to a better private school.
Are you going to abandon me?
With tears in his eyes, Daniel looked at me. By then, I could see through his fake crying, but still, I couldn't defy Daniel. Okay, I'll go to the same high school as you.
Yeah, wait for me there, Ava.
When his opinion prevailed, Daniel showed a sweet smile. It was a reward for me, and I kept pushing myself too hard just to see that smile. When I told my parents about my high school choice, my mom, Isabella, was clearly disappointed in me.
Why would you go to such a mediocre high school? That's right, you need to graduate from a good college and get a promising job.
My dad, Oliver, also said, but I clumsily lied, saying that all my friends were going to that high school. In reality, my friends had chosen better high schools. I also understood that aligning with academically weaker Daniel had no benefit. Plus, lying to my parents was a first for me. I felt torn between guilt towards my parents and keeping my promise to Daniel.
I'm disappointed in you,
they said, and that was the end of our conversation. From the next day, my parents started to visibly distance themselves from me. In contrast, Daniel was in a great mood.
Thanks, Ava. Now we'll be together in high school, too.
Yeah. I was unsure if I was doing the right thing or making a mistake. All I knew was that Daniel was smiling. That was all. After starting high school, my relationship with my parents only worsened.
This month, I overspent on this social game.
Is it that interesting?
Yeah, it's really fun. You should try it, Ava.
Maybe I should. The social game that started in such a casual manner turned out to be the beginning of new troubles. I usually didn't care much about it. I never really liked that game after all. The problem was the friend feature. There were events where players cooperated, and Daniel invited me to the game as his ally.
Ava, your character's weak. Spin the wheel more to strengthen our allies.
Sorry. Following Daniel's instructions, I indeed made our characters stronger. But the in-game spending also increased, and my mom noticed.
Not only did you go to a bad high school, but now you're spending on games? What are you doing?
But my friends...
If those are your friends, you're better off alone.
Don't say that. For the first time, I talked back to my mom. I wouldn't let her say that a world without Daniel would be better.
Talking back to your parents.
My mom looked both angry and sad. Since then, I hardly spoke to my parents. When I discussed this with Daniel, he showed his usual smile.
That's fine, it's your life after all.
Is it though? I wondered why Daniel of all people would say that. Was I really living my own life? Or was I just being manipulated into a life convenient for him? By the time I realized this, it was too late. Right after high school graduation, I chose to work. My parents had completely given up on me. I couldn't even think about going to college, especially since Daniel's attitude suggested he wouldn't allow it.
You wouldn't betray me, would you, Ava?
No. As always, I just agreed. Daniel had dropped out of high school.
There's no point in going to school once you've graduated.
He said so, but the real reason was a conflict with a teacher. With a dropout as his highest education, Daniel couldn't find a company to hire him. He could only get part-time jobs, and he often caused trouble there too.
That boss is so arrogant, it's annoying.
Did you quit your job again? I asked, feeling somewhat fed up. By then, Daniel and I had started living together. Once my parents found out I was dating Daniel, they finally kicked me out. Daniel, too, had a weak relationship with his family and moved into my apartment with nothing but himself.
It's the start of a fun life together.
he said. Sure is. Daniel seemed genuinely happy, but I just forced a smile. I couldn't help but think it was just going to be more trouble. People around me kept saying I should break up with Daniel. He's just a parasite at this point. Well, he does work at least, he wants to. But I saw him skipping work to go to the casino just the other day. Who told you that? My response was cool. My friends gradually distanced themselves from me. Deep down, I knew they were right. Daniel isn't someone who cares about my happiness, but I believed I couldn't be happy without him. I truly thought so. And then it happened soon after.
Turns out an old woman's too much. I'm gonna look for someone younger, so let's call off the engagement, haha.
Daniel said this as he pulled the engagement ring off my finger. Daniel?
I was out of my mind.
His smile wasn't sweet anymore. It was a condescending, unpleasant laugh.
Ava, you're 32, right? Not exactly young.
I'm only a year older than you. My rebuttal felt hollow. Daniel never cared about his own age. He simply wanted to switch to younger, cuter girls. And Daniel had already been cheating with several of them. Daniel was good-looking and knew how to charm. Seducing girls was easy for him. The reason these affairs didn't last was probably because his selfish nature became apparent, or because he was financially unreliable. I'm a witness to that. Above all, I'm the representative of his victims. Haven't been deceived by Daniel.
All right then, bye Ava.
Daniel waved his hand. In it, he held the engagement ring he had pulled off my finger. I wondered who he intended to give that ring to next. That's what I thought, and that's when I decided. Daniel, I won't let you have your way anymore. Goodbye, Daniel.
Oh, you're pretty understanding. That's what I always liked about you, Ava.
Is that so? It seemed my time being liked by Daniel was already in the past. Perhaps he never really liked me at all. Now that you understand, get out.
What?
Oh, did you forget? I'm the one renting this apartment. Oh, right. He smirked as if realizing I was kicking him out. He still didn't get it, I thought. Before I knew it, I was smiling too. Your clothes, too. What? The clothes you're wearing. I bought them all. Oh, keep your underwear. Give me everything else. I'll sell them to a thrift store.
You want me to leave in just my underwear?
Daniel exclaimed.
I should have at least one outfit I bought myself.
Nope, I have the proof.
Proof?
All the clothing store receipts. I kept them all. And for groceries, utilities, everything.
What's that about?
His voice became increasingly pitiful.
I mean, keeping a toothbrush is pointless, right? And there are 2 sets of dishes, so one set is...
I'll throw them out.
Then at least give them to me.
You can only take what you bought yourself, Daniel. Daniel looked out the window with a look of despair.
Is it snowing outside?
Yes. I nodded calmly. Daniel pleaded with a trembling voice.
At least let me keep my jacket.
Fine, you can wear the undershirt, but not the jacket. It's a designer brand and worth a good price. I smiled emptily. The jacket I bought for Daniel. He insisted on having it, and I gave in. It was just a year ago. The black long coat suited him so well. At that time, I felt proud.
You're a devil.
I'm fine with being a devil. After all, I'm just an old woman. I waved my hand at the door and closed it, thinking I should change the locks soon. I had taken back the spare key from Daniel, but he might have another one.
You'll regret treating me like this. I'll never see you again.
I heard Daniel's parting words. I crouched down, holding my head. I felt anxious. I had broken up with him in a rush, but could I really come to dislike Daniel? He had been with me all this time, and now he won't be there in my future days. I've lost a smile forever. Realizing this, I raised my head. Leaning against the door, I burst out laughing. Daniel's gone. He's really gone. I felt truly free at last. There was a sense of relief and fulfillment. Daniel had long since ceased to be a love interest for me. It was just inertia keeping us together. Being with Daniel meant always worrying about upsetting him and couldn't be myself. It became clear to me. I don't need you anymore, Daniel. This was just right. He left on his own. As I thought this, a tear rolled down my cheek. I finally realized. I had written him off a long time ago. For me, he was nothing but a detriment, and I was surprised at my own weakness for looking away from that fact. And there was still a slight feeling of loneliness, but that feeling would end today. Be prepared for tomorrow, Daniel. Looking at the empty room, I murmured, "Let's do this." I was ready to move on, Busy days lay ahead. The first thing to do was change the locks. When I spoke to my landlady Harper about it, she said it was probably for the best.
Your boyfriend wasn't well liked in the apartment complex.
Is that so? I was able to take her words more calmly than expected. The old me would have been angry. Any criticism of Daniel used to be unbearable for me, but now it was different. Like a cloudy sky clearing up rapidly, my thoughts became clear. Please take care of the lock change.
Okay, got it.
Harper responded affirmatively with a strong nod. On my way back to my apartment, I was stopped by another tenant, Zoe. What is it? You were Daniel's fiancé, right? Ex-fiancé now. Oh, so you did break up? Zoe frowned, seemingly troubled. Looking around, she then said, Could you come to my apartment? Why? I'm being followed by him. He's spreading rumors that we're dating, and the stalking is getting worse every day. I'm scared. Zoe said, looking intently at me, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. He said he would marry me after breaking up with you. What? But you seem like a normal person. You don't look at all like the horrible woman he described. He was bad-mouthing me. I felt a grimace forming on my face. Guided by Zoe, I visited her apartment. What I heard was Daniel's appalling other side. I knew he sometimes took money from my wallet, but to buy you gifts with it? Yes, he always seemed to have a lot of money despite barely working. Turns out, he was stealing money from his fiancé's wallet. While sipping coffee Zoe offered, she said, I should have told you sooner, I'm sorry. It's okay, we're both suffering because of the same man, I said with a bitter smile. But now we need to think about what comes next. What comes next? Zoe asked, puzzled. Yes, how we're going to get back at Daniel. I shared my thoughts with her. Zoe listened intently, nodding and agreeing repeatedly. Then I had something additional to add. Actually, I knew about you before. What? Zoe looked surprised, which was understandable. We lived in the same apartment complex, but that was it. Our lives were so different, we hardly saw each other, and if we did, it was just a passing greeting. I took a stack of documents from my purse. Please don't be upset, but I had a detective investigate all of Daniel's affairs. What? Zoe looked at me. Her eyes were slightly fearful. I smiled to ease her tension and said, The report said you were just being pursued one-sidedly by Daniel. Please believe me, I have nothing to do with him. I believe you, calm down. Thank God. Zoe let out a relieved sigh. Of the other women, only 3 out of 5 were in a clear romantic relationship with him. You and another woman were just being pursued by him. So there are others who have suffered like me? Zoe hung her head. Clearly, she was distressed. Knowing there were other women in the same situation, she must have felt empathy and sympathy. I leaned in slightly and said, Shall we meet them? Huh? We'll work together to teach Daniel a lesson. Get back at him, but how? Through a lawsuit, I said more assertively. First, we'll talk to the police to get him recognized as a stalker. He's not smart enough to give up. There'll be a chance to sue. Use me as bait to lure him? Well, not exactly. I was flustered. Indeed, that's how it seemed. I had been about to impose danger on Zoe. Just as I was about to hastily retract my proposal, Zoe nodded in response. I'll do it. Do what? I'll be the decoy if it means we can beat him. Really? I thought I saw a flame in Zoe's eyes. Then from now on, we're allies. Yes. Oh, by the way, my name's Zoe. She introduced herself, albeit belatedly. So, with this introduction, Zoe and I began to open up to each other. Unaware of what was going on, Daniel, as expected, persistently proposed marriage to Zoe. I waited for the right moment and went to meet Daniel with Zoe. Upon seeing me, Daniel screamed, What the hell, Zoe? Why are you with Ava? We are allies, Zoe replied, avoiding his gaze. It's not just the 2 of us. What? Why are all of you here? Daniel recoiled in shock. There were 4 other young and beautiful women. They were the women Daniel had been wooing. One of them, like Zoe, had been a victim of his stalking. The anger in her eyes, as she looked at Daniel, was palpable. The other 3 women acknowledged they had been dating Daniel. However, they each claimed that they were in a relationship with him under the promise of marriage. In essence, all of them had been deceived by Daniel. I didn't know you were engaged, Daniel.
It's a misunderstanding. I broke up with her already.
What about the other girls? They all thought they were going to marry you, including me.
Yikes.
Among the 6 women, including myself. There was one particularly assertive woman. When she learned that Daniel had been deceiving her just for fun, she became incredibly angry. Now she was confronting Daniel. As the woman yelled at him, Daniel looked at me, his eyes brimming with tears.
Ava, it was you, wasn't it? You told him.
Uh-huh, sure. I tilted my head and replied. But Daniel, you're the one who deceived everyone.
Even so, calling everyone here at once? Help! Forgive me.
Daniel was surrounded by the other women, all complaining to him at once. They all had really loved him. I understand, because I felt the same way. With a mix of pride and oddness, I watched Daniel and the women. A year has passed since then. I continue to interact with Zoe. Lately, we've been visiting each other's apartments more often. And then, as I was talking, my phone rang. I ignored it and continued my story. Zoe looked puzzled.
Ava, aren't you going to answer that?
Oh, it's fine. It's not important.
Really?
Zoe seemed curious. I smiled wryly. Without checking, I knew who was calling. It was Daniel. Daniel keeps complaining every time he gets a new girlfriend, I said.
Why?
Because Emma exposes his past to each new girlfriend. He wants me to stop her.
Oh.
Zoe sighed as if she knew Emma would do that. Emma was the first woman to confront Daniel that day. I don't think there's much I can do. Emma isn't the type to listen, I said. Probably not. We shared a bitter smile. The calls came at any time, during meals, at work, or even while talking with friends. Enough already. At one point, I couldn't stand it anymore and answered Daniel's call. Daniel sounded desperate.
Just stop it, please. Get Emma to stop.
You brought it upon yourself, I replied, thinking about tonight. Tonight, we're having hot pot at Zoe's house. My friends and Zoe's friends were coming together to enjoy a pot on a winter night. I was looking forward to that, so I wasn't really listening to Daniel's words seriously. I was just saying what I thought. You made 6 women, including me, unhappy. You have to bear that.
I'm not with anyone now. Zoe treats me like a stalker, and every time I get a new girlfriend, she leaves because of Emma.
I can't help you with that. Emma's grudge was deep. Stopping her seemed pointless. Is that all?
Is that all? What a cold response. Don't you feel a bit sorry for me?
No, I'm a devilish old woman, remember? I said and ended the call. Then I muttered quietly. I'm still bothered by being called an old woman. Surprised by this realization, I shook my head, trying to shift my mood. That's when I saw him.
Ah, Ava, it's been a while.
A man was running towards me with a smile. At first, I didn't recognize him, but his smile brought back memories. That helped me remember. Jackson?
I came nearby because my mom said so. I never thought I'd see you.
The cheerful man was Jackson, my childhood friend. After that, Daniel still kept contacting me. His persistence surprised and annoyed me, but I continued to ignore him. I changed my phone number once, but he even showed up at my apartment. Getting rid of Daniel was a hassle, so I just kept the same number and continued to ignore him.
Should I talk to him sternly?
No, I've decided not to involve myself with him anymore. Okay then, Jackson nodded, looking slightly disappointed. He'd returned from Boston for an arranged marriage his mother had set up.
What about you, Ava? Any matchmaking?
No, I am estranged from my parents.
Oh, that's too bad. Jackson frowned. Your ex-boyfriend ruined your life.
I was naive. I dreamt about him and depended on him. Now I understand. My life revolved around Daniel. I was always concerned about his mood, happy or sad at his words. I'm fine now. I can walk alone.
If that's the case, then that's good.
Jackson looked unconvinced. To persuade him, I took out something.
What's that?
My college diploma. I secretly attended an online university while with Daniel. I felt I owed it to my parents, who had high hopes for me. But I couldn't betray Daniel, so I chose to study between work.
That's surprising.
Jackson laughed out loud.
But it's a good thing. Now you can aim for a career upgrade.
Yeah, maybe. After a while of laughter, my phone rang again. Jackson scratched his head and said,
Hey, Ava.
What?
Why don't you date me?
What are you talking about? I was flabbergasted. The phone was still ringing. You're not serious, are you?
I am.
Jackson's voice was earnest. His face lost its smile and showed tension.
I've always had feelings for you.
You're joking.
I'm serious.
Jackson's face turned red as he insisted. I couldn't help but smile genuinely. I gave in to Jackson's persistence and started dating him. We were the same age and got along well. With Daniel, I had always conferred to him, so the easygoing relationship with Jackson felt odd. The phone call still continued. Every time the phone rang, Jackson looked either annoyed or sad. I took his hand and smiled. It's okay, you're here with me.
Ava.
Jackson looked worried for a moment, but then he nodded firmly.
I'll protect you, Ava.
I'm an old woman, you know.
If you're an old woman, then I'm an old man. We're the same age.
Right. Maybe it didn't mean much to Jackson, but his words finally freed me from the spell of being called an old woman.